Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Donna, my wife, is not working today. So thanks to my phone for having an alarm reminding me, hey, you have a live stream today because otherwise I would have just totally forgotten. Bite Moose, hello. I obviously I don't have anything special prepared. Since my wife was here, I just figured it was like another Saturday in my brain. So anyway, I hope everybody is doing well. We have strange weather. It's like it's kind of chilly out and it's windy, but it's also very sunny. Uh, I'm trying to think what happened this week. I got to install internet service at my daughter and son-in-law's house. They're out of town, but my youngest is staying at their house today. Or this week when they're gone. She's house sitting and there was no internet access. So I actually had to go to Spectrum and sign and do a self-activation of internet service. And it's in my name now. So when they get back from their 1 year anniversary vacation, we have to go and switch it back to their name. But I got it working. And it seems to be working well. So that was kind of fun. I don't normally get to set up networking anymore, and I enjoy doing that. I kind of miss doing that sort of a thing. So having an opportunity to set up anything brand new networking wise is always welcome. Bite Moose, thank you. Yes, Donna's actually been feeling a little ill, but since she didn't work today, she did get to sleep in, and I'm hoping that the extra sleep kind of helps her. I think maybe she was just a little over sleepy. Hello. I got another question related to data centers. By all means, go ahead and ask. I will do my best to answer. My data center is going to be shut down before too long because the house that I set up the internet access in is the house that my daughter and son-in-law have moved into and out of my farm. So my farm is going to go up for sale very shortly. And I'm a little sad. We were there yesterday. No, we were there the day before yesterday to meet with a realtor. And it's like, I'm happy that we're selling it, but also it's just so sad. It's such a gorgeous place. I mean, the sunrise at our farm is just the most amazing way to start every morning. Right through the kitchen window, it's just this gorgeous scenic vista with the barn and trees and the sunrise. It's just amazing. And I'm going to be sad to see that go. So, but yeah, Chef Daddy Opa, by all means, ask any data center questions you have, and I will do my best to answer. But I was just reading how Linux works. Linux Bible, I'm going through your vids. I'd like to get Linux Plus, or at least some knowledge for it. And Linux Plus, again, my course is not complete, but what's there is I think it's pretty robust when it comes to objectives, at least. And even if you don't get the certification, it's a very thorough look at Linux. So where does the Linux Plus level of working knowledge sit in the real world? I think that with a Linux Plus certification, you can confidently work on production Linux servers and solve some problems. I think the more advanced certifications really only make sense after you've been working in a Linux rich environment for a long time. And so, I think that Linux Plus, and I think Linux Plus is comparable to LPIC 1. It's just a good, well-rounded look at all things Linux. And so if you get that certification, I think you can confidently do, a Linux-centric job. And some of that depends on the person too, right? Like, I think that with that amount of skill, I'd be confident being the main sysadmin in a place that uses Linux. But you have to be able to solve problems that you're not, immediately familiar with. But that's just how being in IT is. So as long as you realize, I have the foundation to do all things Linux, and if something pops up you don't understand, you know the type of things that you need to figure out. You like have the tools, even if you don't have the know-how yet. So Yeah. Let's see. Okay. So I found another entry level path into being data center technician. Co-location centers. Almost taking anyone who has no working experience or proper starts or required skills. Hello, Scott and Chef Daddy Opa. So yes, and what's interesting about co-location centers, and I've worked with I've worked my last job, not the one that I'm at now, but the job before that, we were in 5 different co-location data centers around the Western US. And the folks who work at the actual co-location centers are often used as like remote hands, where you basically are given a task by whoever owns the servers, like the system administrator or the owner of the systems will give you specific instructions on what they'd like you to do, and you do those things. But usually you don't actually have to have very specific know-how apart from how keyboards work and how to log in if given the login and password and that sort of a thing. So yes, if you can get a job as a data center technician, it's definitely the kind of job that you aren't expected to know how to actually troubleshoot computers, but you almost get to be that proxy for people who are remote but are doing the troubleshooting, and you get to be their literal remote hands, and so you get to learn a lot. I think it's one of those jobs that you learn so much as you're doing the things, because you're just being told exactly what to do. So yeah, if you can find that gig, I have no idea how well it pays, but it's a great job for learning stuff too, because there's no expectations that but you kind of learn by doing, and you don't even have to figure it out. You just do what the remote people tell you to do. Bite Moose, been working in networks for the last 10 years. We are moving towards more Linux-based working for automation and stuff. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. It's funny, even networking is becoming, software defined networking and stuff. It's cool, but it's also a little bit sad for me how everything is getting abstracted away, because somebody has to know what's going on, right? I mean, somebody still has to know how things are working underneath the behind the scenes. And so I think those specialized roles are going to be, less in demand, but the demand that's there is going to be premium, if that makes sense. It's kind of like Fortran and Cobalt programmers. Like, there's not a lot of need for them, but the little need there is, they can demand a high price because of it. I think the same thing is going to be the case for local hardware and operating system administrators kind of thing, but I'm not making an official prediction or anything. I don't think there's any dumb questions, but let's see. How much work would it take me to finish up the Linux Plus course? So there's a couple answers to that question. It would take, it's probably just a little over half done. So it would take a lot of work. The issue right now is that the skill or the objective that I'm currently in the middle of is one that's really difficult pedagogically to teach, meaning there's a lot of individual commands and concepts that need to be broken down and taught, and it takes a lot of work. So I can either just push through and make that happen, or I could skip over that and go to some things that might be easier to teach to get some momentum, and then go back and fill that in. But I don't know which is going to be the best to actually get the course done. But there's still a lot left to do. So unfortunately, it's not anything simple, or I would have actually done it, because I do the simple stuff first. Chef Daddy Opa, I really don't mind starting down in a new industry. I'm trying to get into. I've learned in all my life experience I can grind at the plates. I know reward in the long run. Yeah, and Chef Daddy Opa, if you have an opportunity to work as a technician in a co-location center, that's a pretty sweet gig. Like I said, it's free on-the-job training that you have literally no expectations from your employer to actually know how to do the stuff that you'll be doing in proxy. So that's a really, really cool gig, especially if you're hoping to use it to learn more stuff. Uh, yeah, because that really, if you have that opportunity, I would seriously look into it. It would be, I think it wouldn't be difficult at all. The job itself wouldn't be difficult, but it would be every day you'd just be learning because people will tell you what they wanted you to do, and I think the only challenging part might be to figure out one, why they're having you do the thing, and then the more you learn, the more you might realize that sometimes the people in charge don't know what they're doing, and you might be thinking like, this is not a good idea. But then you have to decide, like, do you say to the person with those that are giving you those instructions, do that or don't do that? Or, should you like push back and say, actually, maybe you want to try this? I think that's where I would struggle. If somebody was not being particularly intelligent in their troubleshooting remotely and they just, had me consistently shoot them in the foot with my hand, that would be difficult. So yeah. Mason, love to work in a data center, your dream job. It's cool. It's funny. There are a lot of they're noisy. Data centers are so noisy. But the co-location center is fascinating because of that weird dichotomy of, you're actually there physically working on machines that are usually broken. And also you're not the one that has to know what's going on. That's just an interesting place to be in. But as part of the role I have now is learning the Cisco Nexus DC switching stuff. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. And yeah, I don't know anything about the Nexus DC switching stuff, to be quite honest. But I mean, if you're going to learn networking stuff, learning it on Cisco is kind of like the way to go, because everything kind of looks at Cisco as the standard and then tries to be as similar or as compatible, at least conceptually, as possible. So yeah, I'm not sure if I have no wax on my braces because I was just eating a little while ago, and all this talking now, my lips are moving in, kind of wearing a hole in my lip. So might have to stop and put wax in my teeth here. But nonetheless, this is cool talking about tech stuff already. I love it. All right. Yeah. Lay it on us. What's the brand new goal for the industry? Is this for you in particular? Hold on. I'm going to try to put wax in my teeth just while we're talking here. At least on the one side. There. At least that's the one spot that was... No, not the other spot. We'll see if just those two pieces do the trick. Otherwise, I'm going to go across the way and there's a bathroom upstairs. I got to do it. So I'll be right back. I'm going to put wax across my braces so I can talk without bleeding. Be right back. I have nothing to keep everybody busy. I'll put some music on. Do some lo-fi background music. Be right back. I don't know if that music actually played or not, but all right. What did I miss here? I appreciate that. I did take a wax break, and yeah, feeling a lot better. That's much nicer. Have I ever worked in a data center, Sean, or been in one? So I have been the person on the other side in the data center, instructing people what to do, and I've had some on-prem server rooms with multiple racks of servers, but never at an actual proper data center. I've never had an actual job working in one. So again, I've been the person that's called in to data centers to to get servers working using remote hands, or like my coworker would actually fly in to the data center, and like I would work with him to do stuff, but I've never actually worked in one. I just know that they're loud. And then for a number of years, I was the admin for a big data center that had Bitcoin miners in it, like thousands of Bitcoin miners. And I went there several times where I was, but even though I managed it remotely, and I would fly in a couple times to visit, and it's just so loud, but I never actually worked there in person doing stuff. So, wait, Scott worked when you're 27. Hold on, I might. So like you worked through data center. I'm curious what we're talking about here. Maybe it's answered down further. Bite Moose, have I ever used Proxmox? Yes, I use Proxmox a lot. I love Proxmox. I have a highly available cluster at my farm right now. It's pretty great. I like it, and I use a 3-server cluster, and then I have SSD drives attached to each server, and then I use Ceph CEPH on managed inside Proxmox for storage. So the storage is accessible on all 3 cluster members, and one can just be shut off, and everything works great. So yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm a big fan of Proxmox. How do we know when you get a card from a C programmer and they sign their name with a semicolon? Scott, had braces. Oh, you had braces at 27. Yeah, me, I got them. Let's see, I was 48. I'm 49. I'm looking forward to them being gone, but my teeth are so far from being lined up, and not straight. They're straight now, but my top jaw and bottom jaw are so far from being lined up like normal. I can't close my mouth and have my teeth touched like normal. So I don't know what's going to happen, how long it's going to take. But anyway, Mary, happy Sunday to you too. Mary is my sister, everyone. My little sister. Well, I mean, she's an adult now, but she's still my younger sister. Chef Daddy Opa, I'll work at a co-location center to break in the industry in Silicon Valley. Ooh, nice. Oh wow, yeah, that's an awesome plan. And if you can get that role at the data center, that's even cooler. Chef Daddy Opa, that sounds awesome. That sounds just incredible. Mason, don't do much with Proxmox, but I have a couple of questions regarding it. Can you control 2 Proxmox servers from one Proxmox server? And can server 2 be controlled? Yeah. In fact, you want to see a demo? I don't think there's anything that I'll be hiding or that I need to hide. So let me get a window over there. Let me log in real quick, and then yeah. I don't see anything on here that is going to be anything I have to worry about. All right. Okay, almost there. Okay, so yeah, let's see if we can switch over. Mock him with face. All right, so here we are. I'm logged in. I think I have the right screen up. Yeah. So I'm logged in on my Proxmox server. So I have 3 of them, and here you can see there's probably other stuff here that you can snoop around if stuff looks interesting. But nonetheless, farm farm, Prox 1, Prox 2, and Prox 3. These are the 3 Proxmox servers that are on my local network at my farm. And I can click on either one of them, and the web interface will give me access to all of the servers in the cluster. So this interface, where I can communicate and connect with any of them, they're all accessible from all of the cluster members. So you'll notice here I'm on a 5.21 up here in the address bar, you can see. And if I go to a different one, oh, that's the one I was just at. But if I go like to Prox 3, it's the same interface, but it's a different IP address, and they just all have the same thing. And then the Ceph, CEPH, this is where they all share this pool as well. And so if I go to the main data center up here, and I go to storage, no, if I go to Ceph, it'll show that I have, each server has 2 SSDs. So that means there's 6, I forget what they're called. I don't know, the PGs, I guess. There's 6 of them that are up. And then if any one server completely shuts off, I still have an active copy of my data. And so, yeah. And then if you look in storage, the Ceph pool right here is there and is accessible to all of them. It doesn't show the size here, but it's, yeah, anyway, but it works really well. So yeah, Proxmox, the web interface that you use is accessible from any one of the cluster members, and they can communicate with the entire cluster from anyone that you're on. Hopefully that answers the question. Let me get back to the screen here. Let's see. All right. Shane, hello. Sorry, I'm catching up on comments when I was going there. I already found the logs. Oh, so yeah, the logs are all going to be in, so here, I guess, if you're talking about like the Proxmox cluster logs, if you go here, you may not get all the logs you're looking for, but when you are using, again, the web interface from any one of the cluster members, if you click up top at the data center, the cluster itself, that's where you can see all of the options, including, there should be, let's see, summary, routes, rules, Acme, firewall. I don't know, maybe there's not. Maybe you have to go to an individual server to see the logs. I don't know, but I mean, you have access to everything. Usually the stuff that has to do at the top level are all going to be up here at the top level. So anyway, hopefully that gets you in the right direction anyway. All right, back here. Bite Moose says, a guy at work recommends Proxmox because he knows I want to learn Linux. Yeah. So the nice thing too, I mean, Proxmox just uses Debian it's just the host OS is just Debian. I mean, you install it as a full operating system, but it's running Debian underneath. And so that's really cool. How do I do that with the web thing? Or let's see, maybe there's another follow up here. Hold on. Do you have to have the cluster? Can there be 3 standalone servers access from one server? No, in order for them to access each other, they have to be part of a cluster. But I mean, having 3 standalone servers, if they're in the same location, I don't know that that's a good idea anyway. You probably want to cluster them because that's part of the advantage of having a cluster is that they can work together, and, you can fail over, your virtual machines and your containers and stuff. So, no, if they're not part of a cluster, you can't see the other machines from any one machine. But if they are clustered, you can do like I was showing. And that's pretty much the standard cluster install. What I showed you, there's nothing fancy there. The only fanciness that's in my install would be the Ceph file system setup as well. But that is separate from the cluster setup itself. That is just once the cluster is set up, then you can also set up the shared file system using Ceph across the 3 servers. And that's what I did. You do have to have an odd number of cluster members, and you can, like, if you have 4 servers and you really want to make a cluster, you can use something small like a Raspberry Pi to be the 5th, just to make it an odd number. And it's just called like a quorum server or something, just to make it an odd number. But no, it's not too difficult. And what a lot of people do, especially in a home lab environment, Mason, is go online and get like the used micro PC computers. You can get them for fairly cheap. And like if you look on YouTube under like Serve the Home, I don't know that guy's name, but I see that he often talks about like low end, sometimes used servers, and you can just put them together and build a cluster out of them to do experimenting, if nothing else, like migrating from one to another. Like if I'm doing upgrades on my Proxmox cluster, I'll just take all the virtual machines and containers that are on like Prox 1, and I'll do a live migration to one of the other 2 cluster servers, and then I will update and then reboot the Prox 1 server, and then I'll migrate everything to that server and for upgrade purposes. So yeah, clustering Proxmox is so cool. It really is. Yeah, I highly recommend it. And again, just get just those small like micro servers, like, I don't know, the ones that are like this big, like terminals that you see, not necessarily thin clients, but like small little computers, but that, are not terribly expensive, and used is probably the way to go to set those up. And if they can take a second hard drive in them too, it's also a great way to experiment with the Ceph file system, where it's a shared file system across the network. The thing that makes my setup a little fancier is that each one of my 3 servers has a quad 10 gigabit Ethernet card, because I wanted my background Ceph shared file system stuff to go and have their own dedicated 10 gigabit network. So all that can be extremely fast. But you can set that up in a smaller home server or, home lab kind of thing, and not have a dedicated, 10 gigabit backbone. You can just use that single NIC for all the stuff. It's just going to be slower if you're doing it in, in production. Mustafa, hello. Okay, yeah, I would play like the Zuma board, possibly. I'm not familiar with the Zuma board, but yeah, like the HP Ultra small form factors. Basically, just anything that's going to be fairly cheap, like Intel NUCs. I don't even know if they make NUCs anymore. I think they said they were going to stop making NUCs, and then they are making them again. But anything like that is fine. I think you can even use Raspberry Pis, like especially the newer ones. You probably make a Proxmox cluster with Raspberry Pis, but you could get one of those ultra small form factor PCs for the same price as a Raspberry Pi these days. So yeah, just whatever you can get your hands on for the most affordable thing. Just remember that you have to have an odd number. That's the kicker. And while, like I said, you can use, a small little computer to be the odd man out, just to get an odd number quorum. That's a kludge. So it's best if you can get an odd number of servers. Obviously 3 is usually the starting place to go. But, there's sometimes I wish I had 5 of them, just because it would make upgrades easier, because when I move everything that's spread across my 3 servers, when I migrate everything to 2 of them, they're pretty loaded up. Those 2 servers, while I'm upgrading the 3rd, it's pretty maxed out. And so there's probably a performance hit on the VMs, but since I just do that while I'm upgrading, it's tolerable. May have to ask if I can borrow 1 or 2 of the machines they throw out at work. Bite Moose, honestly, I know a lot of people just get castaway computers if they have a place that gets rid of several-year-old hardware. It's perfect for this kind of, headless testing type environment. And if you have 3 like i5, i7, whatever workstations, it can be a surprisingly powerful virtualization platform. So, it's not like it's not going to be usable. It's just something you wouldn't want to like try to scale into, massive production. I mean, what I have, my 3 servers is way overkill for the amount of traffic that I get on most of my servers. Most of my servers are just things that I use for myself. And probably the biggest external hits are going to be web services and stuff like that. Well, I guess my Plex server, I have a bunch of friends that share my Plex server with me. So I guess that is probably the biggest resource hog. But other than that, it's just serving myself. So yeah. Samples and tests. Hello. Mason, I have a friend who works in a company always replacing hardware like i5s. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And if you can get 3 of those like i5s with 16 gigabytes, PC, if you can get 3 of them that are identical, it's nice. It's nice to have 3 identical or as close to identical computers as possible, just so that every cluster member is about the same. That's nice. Not strictly required, but if I were building a cluster, I would want to start from 3 similarly spec'd computers. I've always just heard that, and they said we love his Plex. Yeah. So I did find recently that Plex changed their licensing. It used to be that as long as the person with the server was a Plex Pass subscriber, anybody who shared their library could do local downloads for offline use, like if you're going to a place that doesn't have internet access. But they changed that now, and you have to be a Plex Pass subscriber yourself in order to download for offline use, which I find extremely annoying. But that's just a side story altogether. Something like Jellyfin doesn't have offline downloads at all, so it's not like that's a viable replacement. Mason, I really want to go back to Plex. I don't like the fact that you have to sign in every time there are servers to use something that's local. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of downsides of Plex. Your TVs don't have a Jellyfin app? That's interesting. I know Roku has a Jellyfin app. What kind of TV do you have that doesn't have a Jellyfin app? That's surprising to me. I mean, I believe you. That's sad. Yeah, because MB is also another possibility. It's not free, but it's a different platform from Plex, and MB is what Jellyfin is based on, and there might be more application, like you might have an app on your TV for that. Scott, if you put enough memory and SSD or NVMe drives, the CPU doesn't have to be that strong. Yeah, Scott, yeah, I mean, depending on what you're doing. Like, for example, with Plex, if I'm doing a lot of transcoding, I definitely need to have some CPU horsepower. And what I have not done, I have not used Proxmox with GPU pass-through. I don't have any like serious GPUs in any of my servers, although I think I've read that it's possible to do direct access GPU throughput on Proxmox to an individual virtual machine. But the problem is hot migrations. They don't, even if all the servers have GPUs, I think if a VM migrates to another host, it doesn't work. Like the GPU stuff doesn't hot migrate over. So anyway. Samsung TVs all under 5 years old and can't find the Jellyfin app. That is very unfortunate, Mason. I mean, I guess you have it's a kludge though, right? It's all built into the remote and stuff. You have the option to get an external like Roku device or something that would have Jellyfin, but then you got 2 remotes to deal with, and that's no fun. So that stinks. Huh. I'm very sorry to hear that. And yeah, Plex is fine. Now, the one thing even if I were to switch over to Jellyfin for most everything, I would still keep Plex for my audiobooks, because it's funny, Plex is not great when it comes to being an audiobook client. However, if you store your audiobooks on Plex, the Prologue app on, like, for iPhones, the Prologue app, and there used to be one on Android called Chronicle, but apparently it's not available anymore. I don't know. One of my friends tried to install Chronicle, and he said it wasn't available on the Google Play Store anymore. But if you have your audiobooks on Plex, you can use the Prologue app on iOS, and it's incredible. And it works really well with Plex, but but listening to a book using Plex itself is not great. So it only works good as a server backend for it. Yeah. Mason, that's a nice option, a Fire Stick or something. Yeah, and I mean, I don't really have a preference one platform over another. I used to always love Roku because they were platform independent, like they didn't have, but now I think they have their own streaming services, and probably some bigger company even owns them now. I don't even know, but we're mostly a Roku family around here, although a couple of the televisions that like my kids have now have something like either Vizio has this, it's not, I don't even remember what it's called. Like, it's not WebOS. I think WebOS is specifically LG, because one of our TVs is LG and it has WebOS. I don't know if it has Jellyfin. I know it has Plex. And then Vizio has its own app platform now. It's just so crazy. Everybody has their own app platform. And the problem with external things is, like I said, then you have the remote issue. And yeah, sometimes you can use HDMI KEC, so if you get a fancy Roku device, like a Roku Ultra, a lot of times their remote will do the basic functions on a television. So you can use just your Roku app to turn the volume up and down and turn the TV on and off. So that is a potential solution using a Roku. Probably others do that too. But yeah, that's always a frustration. What we have is, and I don't necessarily recommend it, we have a thing called a Caavo, CAAVO, and it has a bunch of inputs and one output to the television and then a standalone remote. And it allows you to switch HDMI sources, control volume, external volume. Like we have a Sonos speaker system for our front room. And so it controls the Sonos speakers, but it will also switch between different input sources like the Apple TV or, an Xbox or Roku. And it's nice, but it's spendy. And I don't think the company's doing terribly well. So yeah, I don't know. But anyway, Caavo is something that saved our bacon because we had so many different disparate devices that we wanted to connect to one computer without having 10 remotes. So we just have the one remote, which, no, that's not true. We still have to have a second remote to physically turn the television off. Our Caavo remote can do everything, but it doesn't turn the TV off, which is just so funny. So yeah. Anyway, any other questions? Any other nerdy stuff you want to talk about? Even if you don't have a use for Proxmox like in your production, I really think it's a great platform to learn about virtualization and high availability and things like Ceph FS. I've been very impressed with Ceph for being a storage thing that's built in. Now, the other option that I could have had if I didn't use Ceph across the Proxmox servers themselves, the other option would have been an external like NAS or something with a 10 gigabit connection connected to a 10 gigabit secondary port on each server so that they could share NFS access to that. And that's the way that I've done that sort of a thing before, is always had the VM images on an external NAS. But with Ceph, it's all built in so that it has the speed of locality and it does the syncing across a dedicated 10 gigabit backend. It's just pretty slick. I don't know. Ceph is just really cool. Loving Proxmox. Yeah, cool. Blake Moose, just got time to start Linux from scratch. Oh, okay. Yeah, Linux from scratch is a great way to learn about Linux. It's a lot of work, and then it's the kind of thing where like Linux from scratch, it's like, oh, I'm so glad I did that, and I probably will never do it again, sort of thing. It's like a learning way, but it's like a lot of the work that you do to figure out Linux from scratch makes you appreciate the stuff that other distributions kind of do for you, because it's so much work. Scott, I don't know Orca Slicer, and it took like 2 hours. I believe it was built from a source. I don't know what Orca Slicer is, but it's interesting. So, okay, you just say building from source. So I have an old 12-inch MacBook. It was the original MacBook, and it's known to be dog slow. If you follow me on social media, it's the one that I literally named it Crappy MacBook. It looks sleek, and the problem, and I thought it was like the hard drive speed or something. And I have a friend who works at Apple, and he said, no, it's the CPU. The CPU is just so slow on that. And it didn't feel like it was a CPU problem, but I should have listened to him because he's absolutely right. And I know that that's what it is because I installed Homebrew on it. I don't know if you're familiar with Homebrew on Mac OS, but I installed Homebrew and I just tried to install some simple application. I don't even remember what the application I was trying to install, but it had a handful of dependencies, and it took literally 3 days to compile the stuff to get this application going. And I had just installed the application. Oh, it was a journal app. It was a command line journal app called JRNL. And so I literally just did brew install JRNL, and it's like, okay, and it has a bunch of dependencies. And I had done it on my $700 Walmart MacBook Air, the cheapest one they have, the M1, the original M1, lowest RAM, lowest hard drive, M1 machine. And it took about 3 or 4 minutes to install on that computer, this command line tool. It compiled all the stuff it needed, installed dependencies, and it took about 3 or 4 minutes. On that old MacBook, it took literally, I'm not exaggerating, 3 full days. I thought the computer had locked up, but no, it was still responsive. It was just sitting there compiling and compiling and compiling and compiling. And I would like open up a new terminal window and look at top to see, and it was like pegged out. The CPU was pegged out, but it still took 3 full days to install this little command line application with its dependencies. And it took like 2 or 3 minutes on the M1 MacBook Air, which is already years old. I mean, it's not, the M1 MacBook is an older computer at this point, but yeah, it was fascinating to me, the several orders of magnitude of slowness. It was shocking. So anyway, let's see. Samples of test try to compile my own Linux kernel like 15 years ago. Really had to because of set up your hardware. Samples and tests, especially. So I used to have to compile my own Linux kernel when I wanted to use Linux on Mac hardware, like before they switched to Intel. Like when it was the PowerPC processor, there were a couple distributions that were designed for PowerPC, like Yellow Dog, which is where Yum came from. There was Yellow Dog that was designed for PowerPC, but even then, when things like new Wi-Fi cards came out, you'd have to compile your own kernel because you'd have to compile kernel modules that would support it. And so, yeah, I remember compiling a lot of kernels in the early MacBook days with the PowerPC processor, especially when Wi-Fi came to be a thing, like 802.11b, the old school original airport cards. You had to do a lot of kernel compiling, and it was always Debian back in the day for me because I just found that the easiest to use. But yeah, Linux chat, Linux boots. Her points, yeah, and the Intel 404. That's yeah. I'm. Oh man, that MacBook is the slowest one ever. Just installed Bear Debian Trixie distro, and they're not come with the compiler. All are making CMake. Have to install them. Yeah, I think that's pretty common. Usually have to install like Build Essential. Well, that's the Ubuntu pack, like meta package. I don't know if that meta package exists on Debian proper. I haven't done that in so long, I don't even remember. But yeah, and it's especially because those compiler tools are just kind of large and they take up a bunch of space. And if it's a bare minimum install, it's definitely not going to include any of those things. Thankfully, they're all free and you can just usually download them and then install. Your uni project was getting IP version 6 working Linux kernel. So compile kernel time. Learned a lot. Yeah, IP version 6 is one of those things that it should be ubiquitous everywhere, but we got so good at using NAT that we have almost made the pain so mild that it hasn't forced us to switch to IP version 6, right? We've eliminated so much of the pain. Although, I mean, there's still, it surprises me that we still have the ability to use IP version 4 for everything. I mean, the idea that I have 5 IP addresses of my own at my farm that are public IP addresses in the IP version 4 universe, it just fascinates me. I'm just one guy on the planet and I have 5 IP addresses all dedicated to myself. It just blows me away. But then, I mean, it wasn't that many years ago. It was like in 2000, which I guess is 24 years ago now. But the school district that I worked at when I first got my job as a sysadmin for the school district, we had 2 Class C networks that were super netted together. So we had basically 510 usable addresses, and every computer in our school district had a public IP address that was routed to the internet. I mean, that's just how it was. We just every computer had a public IP address, and blows my mind that that was the case. But yeah, I had a printer. It'd have a public IP address on the internet, all routable. Yeah, we had a firewall blocking off things, but it's a whole lot tougher to block stuff off if you have a routable network address. So anyway, those were the days. Yeah. Build Essentials part of Debian. Okay. Oh, cool. Yeah. Oh, I'm glad. Yeah, absolutely. You're very welcome. So yeah, Build Essential must have just been adopted, since Ubuntu is Debian based, that must be where they got it. And yeah, Build Essential usually does a job. It always sticks in my mind because I always think it should be called Build Essentials, like plural, but the meta package name is just Build Essential. And the discrepancy there is why it sticks in my head so easily. But yeah, that usually installs most of the stuff. Depending on what you're building, you'll probably have to search for, like, you'll have to run like make configure and read the errors and like figure out what package it wants, and then try to find that package as like an apt package, and don't try to compile, download and compile all the dependencies. If the dependency exists as an apt package, I highly recommend you installing the apt package instead of downloading the source and then do it, because then there's the more potential for conflicts. At least in my experience, I've had, if I've compiled a dependency where that dependency already existed in the apt repositories, it just caused me heartache later. So Oxford Union machines back in the day had external IP addresses that lasted 2010. That's a long time for public IP addresses to exist. Yeah, in Oxford, I think we got rid of all the public IP addressed workstations shortly after I started. I think probably that first year I was just getting my head around the job. Once I realized what we were doing, I was like, whoa, this is a gross misuse of 2 full Class C networks. So yeah. Bamboo Studio that uses the base for Orca Slicer. Oh. So wait, Bamboo Slicer. So Bamboo Slicer is based on Orca Slicer, or Orca Slicer is based on Bamboo Studio? Because I thought Bamboo Studio was totally proprietary. I have to look that up. Sorry. When I talked for a little while and it tore open the inside of my lips, they still hurt. Less now because of the wax, but I shouldn't have started a live stream without wax in covering all my braces. But I did. Oh, looks like I get to have dinner at my eldest daughter's. Or hosting them. I'm not sure which, but yeah, dinner tonight. Orca is based on Bamboo. Okay, so I wonder, Bamboo must have at least some of their source code released. Interesting. Yeah. Or Bamboo, yeah. That's the thing about Bamboo that, so I really was considering it was either going to be a Bamboo printer that I have, or I was going to get the Prusa because everything there is open source. And I ended up going with the Bamboo for two reasons. One, it was available. There was a huge back-ordered log with the Prusa one, and I could get Bamboo immediately. But also the Bamboo's work you had to do to get it ready to go out of the box was much less. They just came ready to print, and that's really what I wanted. I didn't want to have it be like a new project. I just wanted a printer that printed. So when NAT routers with port routing came the default IP4 address, IP4, yeah. Yeah, and when NAT got better, right? I mean, IP masquerading used to not be nearly as good as it is now. I mean, those early NAT things, they just didn't work. They just were not great. And now, since it's the default, not only does the NAT, network address translation, not only does it work better than it used to, but most devices and applications are built with the understanding that they're going to be functioning in a NATed environment. And, port forwarding stuff is going to be how that's going to happen. Even cloud computing is all based on that, right? I mean, if you, and I know this because I do Google Cloud training now for my day job, but I mean, you set up networks inside your private cloud, it's all private IP addresses. It's 10 dot addresses or 192.168 addresses or 172.16 addresses or whatever. And that's what the entire interior is like. And then, you map those to external IPs, but the external IPs are much fewer that you have. So anyway, Chef Daddy Opa, you might have answered this question for me already, but I also want to know how valuable knowing Linux would be in data centers. Linux is still a skill I dream of having to. It depends. I mean, that's usually always the answer. It depends on the data center too. Having the basic understanding of using Linux is going to be vital in a data center, like a co-location center too, because there's going to be a lot of servers there running Linux. And if you have to log in, you're going to have to at least know what that means to log in, to the computer and start doing stuff and typing stuff. If you're the person in charge of troubleshooting the servers, then it just depends on what kind of servers are the data centers filled with. And then even more than that, it's probably going to be Linux. Most data centers have, the majority of the servers in there are going to be running Linux. Not all of them. I mean, there's going to be Windows servers in there too, but most of them are going to be Linux. But then it's like, what flavor of Linux? Like in the data centers, Red Hat is extremely popular. And while it's all Linux, the bits that make it different are significant. And so understanding the Red Hat way of doing things is going to be vital if that's the kind of environment you're in. So it really depends on the data center. I mean, data centers that I've worked in have all been Debian based because I've designed them. And I just, that's where I'm most comfortable. But yeah, it just depends on the data center you're working in. Samples and tests. I had to build my own routing table to create a NAT system for dial-up BBS in the 90s, and I experienced Linux. Oof. NAT in the 90s? Oof. Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. So dial-up BBS in the 90s, and it used, see, that's interesting for me because, I mean, I guess, yeah, it's going to be, because whenever I would dial up to a BBS, it would just be a direct connection to that server, and I would only interact with that server. It wouldn't have any sort of a connection to the internet. So I guess it would just be a local NAT communication with the BBS server. So that's interesting. My first experience with dial-up was I was a tech support for the dial-up service in the town. Actually, I live in now. I didn't live in the town there at the time, but the community college was the only ISP in the area, and it was all dial-up. They had like a channelized T1 that came in and split up into, I don't remember how many channels there are, like 16 or 32 or whatever.
analog lines, and then all those would be TTY devices in a Unix computer, and then that's how you connect it to the internet, and it would give everybody a live IP address, as a static public IP address, not static, I'm sorry, it would be a live public IP address that it would hand out when somebody dialed up. But a BBS is a different beast, right? At BBS, you were just dialing into that server. Like that was the internet that you were connecting to was just that BBS. It was basically like a private chat board, but you had to connect with your phone line instead of the internet. So that's interesting, samples and tests. I hadn't thought about the networking behind a BBS, I guess is what I'm saying. Yeah, it did. That hour went fast again. Chef Daddy Opa, I guess Linux would be this neat little plus or bonus for me in general. Yeah, and I mean, I think that the more you learn about Linux, I don't think you'll regret any Linux stuff that you learn. And the nice thing, I mean, the reason I got into Linux in the first place, if you know my backstory, is because I had a car accident and I couldn't afford anything else. Linux is all I could afford because it was free. And so that's what I kind of got, became an expert on, is Linux, because it's, free. And so when it comes to that, the only real expense is going to be time. So if you have time to invest in learning Linux, it's definitely worth it. Oh, pardon me. So yeah. Samples test use the PPP or slip connection, then set up a routed daemon for the local IP table for the dial-up users to our outside. Oh, so your BBS actually had an uplink to the internet. Now that's interesting. That is really interesting, samples and tests. Yeah, I remember Trumpet Windsock. I did a lot of tech support for Trumpet Windsock. I mean, that was basically the only way people connected. But that's interesting. So you get a private IP address to the BBS, and the BBS had one uplink to the internet. So whenever I connected to BBSs, there was no internet that it connected to. You just connected to that server. Remember in the user group that I was on, got into 56K modems. Yeah. It's crazy. My first modem was a 2400 baud modem. And it was an internal card. I never had the phone coupler one where you like took the phone and put it on the like cups. I never had that. But my first modem was 2400 baud. And yeah, I mean, it worked. It did the trick. All right. Any last minute questions or anything to talk about? I realize we got like 2 minutes left, and I don't want to keep us any longer. But yeah, this is fun. I love talking about computers and networking and data centers. So Chef Daddy Opa, I want to thank you. You started us off with some nerdy conversation that just stayed nerdy the whole time. So I appreciate that. That's a lot of fun. I like it when we have enough people at the live streams where we can have nerdy conversations like this, because there's not a lot of time in my week where I can talk this nerdy out loud. So I appreciate it. I remember my epic Linux career story from Network Chuck. Oh, okay. Him and I were collaborating with CBT Nuggets. Yeah. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. I never get to talk to Chuck anymore. I know he's an uber popular YouTuber, and but I don't get to talk to him very much anymore. He's a busy man. I'm a busy man. I'm back at CBT now, and he's of course not. Scott, my first was a cartridge that plugged into my Commodore 64 300 baud. Oh, dude, that's awesome. So 300 baud, was it a phone coupler? Like you had to like put your phone receiver on it? Because I don't. Did they actually have like internal 300 baud modems? Now I'm just curious. And I know I have like 40 seconds left, but now I'm just curious about that. Mary, hug my grandbabies for me. Okay, we'll do. Bite Moose, have a good weekend. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, and I guess I'm just going to have to Google a Commodore 64 300 baud modem to see if it was a phone coupler, because I'm just curious now. Anyway, thanks for tuning in and talking nerdy with me, everyone. I'll be back Tuesday morning. I should be back at 7 a.m. Eastern if you just want to chat, but it won't be on this YouTube channel. It'll be on my secondary YouTube channel. Yeah, okay. Remember that. Terraform, IOC, Dockers. Yeah. all good topics. I'm always up for topics to talk about for an hour of nerdery. So thanks. I'll see everybody later. And Scott, thanks for now. I won't have to Google it. It was not a phone coupler. That's cool. I didn't know that existed. All right. Have a great day, everyone.